am currently travelling around Iceland, and today we're going to look at Nordic life in some of the smaller villages and towns, specifically Ísafjörður and Akureyri. Today we're in Ísafjörður in Iceland, and it's a quaint little Nordic town which we are going to explore and see what Nordic daily life is like. One thing that I've noticed right off the bat in many Nordic countries, for instance, not simply in Iceland, but also when I was visiting Norway, is that what is considered a town to Nordic countries would in many other areas of the world be considered more like a village. And I think that's really due to the fact that a lot of the Nordic countries are some of the less populated countries in the world, which is definitely a pull factor for myself, definitely a positive. And as you're about to see as we walk around Ísafjörður today and later on Akureyri, it is incredibly underpopulated and peaceful. So this is what cabin life looks like in Ísafjörður, Iceland. What's quite unusual is that a lot of the cabins in Iceland, or at least in this part of Iceland, are not made of wood. They are largely made of steel or aluminium, and that is because, in case you haven't noticed on this Iceland vlog series, there is a large shortage of trees on Iceland, and that is for quite a few reasons. First of all, I mentioned in the last vlog that because it is basically the youngest place on Earth, there has been less time for things like trees and woods to grow, but also the few trees and woods they did have long since been harvested already and made into a few of the actual wooden structures they do have. You find that they are the oldest buildings from the first settlers, but now with the limited option for building log or wood cabins, Icelanders have chosen to use largely corrugated metal for their cabins, as you see as we walk around the outskirts of the village here. We're now going to go explore all the little buildings. What do you think?
Yeah!
We'd actually already been walking round the village or town for quite some time here, so we decided actually to head to the one and only main street and look for somewhere to have coffee. Up the main street there were around 3 coffee shops. One looked like a really quaint little old quirky coffee shop, but the queue was coming out the door, so we couldn't really even fit in there. So we decided to go for a coffee inside this hotel, which also had a cafe bar. And I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised with the lovely Nordic interior design. We've come all this way and it's a Costa. It's okay though, because it sort of might have the best views of any Costa ever, because with there being only one main street to Ísafjörður, the good news is that basically out the back of every property you have this beautiful view of the fjords and all the low cloud, which was just beautiful to watch drifting along as we enjoyed our coffees and Icelandic beers in the case of my mum and Johnny. Hello! Hello! After 2 coffees in, I was raring to go and explore more, so I went off for a little wander whilst my mum and Johnny finished their drinks and returned to see them also ready to explore. but not without me exploring a little bit of the hotel first. I am loving all the Nordic style and the two extremes of the really, really old buildings, but then these modern, sleek interiors with all the concrete. As you know, I have a thing for concrete design, so it's nice, the juxtaposition of the really old style and the modern sort of Nordic / Scandi style, even though technically Iceland isn't Scandi, it is simply Nordic. It's definitely sort of taken an influence, I think. At this point, I went to collect Johnny, but my mum wanted to return back to our place of residence. So we went off exploring on our own what was left to see. The little rainbow roads seem to be a key feature in every town or village and city in Iceland, which is quite a nice, colourful little addition. Also, you will notice on Main Street, it's one of the main areas where there are actually wooden buildings, and that is largely because there were some of the first buildings. We've noticed that within all the little Icelandic towns, even actually in the city of Reykjavik that we were at a few days ago, that the Icelandic people have a very different time to their day, and maybe that is because it is obviously the land of the midnight sun. They have 24 hours of sunlight at certain points of the year and 24 hours of darkness at other points of the year, so they really have to change their daily cycle and how they run their day based on that. So most days now at this time of the year, none of the shops are actually open until 12 noon, which for somebody from where we come from is incredibly late. It's sort of halfway through the day. So some mornings we're arriving and getting up and everything is closed until 12 noon. But then the converse of that is that then they're also having a later day, and it runs much later than the typical 5 p.m. that we would have where I'm from. It's interesting, the different ways of life. So obviously this is the Nordic living, Nordic daily life in Iceland, and particularly in Ísafjörður. Another little interesting fact we learnt this morning is that only 2% of Iceland is covered in trees. There are not very many trees here at all, and that is obviously because it is volcanic. It is the youngest country on Earth at only 15 million years old, so it just hasn't had time to make enough soil from the moss and have roots for trees. So hardly any trees on Iceland. We spent a bit of time window shopping. A key reoccurring thing was me looking at all the beautiful Nordic pottery, but I have to say, like I mentioned in an earlier vlog, the Nordic pottery was very expensive, with each piece being around £40, so around $50 for one mug or one plate. As beautiful as it was, I thought this was a little bit much. We then walked around the Heritage Centre. This building on screen, or that I've just shown, was the oldest building in Ísafjörður, and originally Iceland was settled by Norwegians, so a lot of people from Norwegian descent in Iceland. And then we came into contact with some of the local pets, and we found out that the majority of them are called Thor, and things of that nature to do with mythology and Viking mythology. A lot of the pets seem to be named after iconic mythological people or legends. It is just so peaceful because Iceland is also one of the most underpopulated countries in the world. Very, very peaceful Nordic life living in Iceland. In some of these really small Nordic towns, fishing is definitely one of the main work or exports, as well as the Icelandic ponies, which they actually breed and export all over the world for their hardiness, so fishing and horses. After exploring the delights of the quaint little village of Iceland, it was time to move on to our next slightly larger town of Akureyri. It is one of the largest towns or cities after Reykjavik. There have been settlers here for quite some time, which is why you'll see in the oldest area that many of the homes are actually made out of wood. Lots of log cabins or wooden homes. So today we're actually going around Akureyri. I'm not actually quite sure how to pronounce that yet, but it is very picturesque, as you can see. And we're just looking at daily life in each of these Nordic, very small towns here in Iceland. So we're going to go exploring. We've already been to the bakery and got ourselves a little coffee. So let's see what else we get up to today and what we learn about Nordic daily life. Just to backtrack a second, as I didn't want you all to miss this delightful bakery, I have to say these pastries looked fantastic. Hello. Hello. We stopped and simply had a coffee because I was saving myself for a local rhubarb delicacy that I had been hearing about the whole trip. Whilst admiring the beautiful street art, which we noticed was a reoccurring thing in Iceland, along with the folklore and mythology. We enjoyed a little wander around the streets, also noticing that they had quite a few natural, eco-friendly shops in Iceland, and also we found out a few of the local customs, but not before Johnny wanted to try a local Icelandic hot dog. A famous Icelandic hot dog, because they're a little bit different. Johnny is just waiting to try one of the Icelandic hot dogs, because apparently they're very, very different. But since I don't obviously eat meat, only fish, I won't be partaking in one of those. But basically now we're just going to walk around this is like the high street in Akureyri. And there are quite a few souvenir shops, because mainly these little towns are geared towards either fishing or the tourist trade. So we are going to look at all the minimal and natural type souvenirs, like the salts that they like to use for all the fish in this area come in different flavours, and also the hand soaps and natural products as well. So we're going to just have a browse around that this afternoon before we get on our way. But the hot dogs are supposed to be a local delicacy if you do eat beef. They are made from beef instead of pork. One thing I've actually learned since being here, we are in a playground right now, so it's a little bit noisy in the background, but we are very, very lucky. We've probably come on the sunniest week of the year, because normally it is below 10 degrees basically all the time, and every month of the year it snows. But even in the summer months, because it is below 10 degrees, there is still the possibility of snow, which is very unusual. Not for here, but for us coming from Yorkshire. So the Icelandic hot dog, what's the verdict?
I don't know, you know.
Okay. So I've got the lowdown. It is a remoulade mayonnaise dill sauce.
Very good for £4.
£4, probably one of the cheaper things to eat in Iceland. And apparently it's quite nice. Whilst Johnny finished his hot dog, I enjoyed watching the local Icelandic seagulls, which were quite little, but just as cheeky as our seagulls back home. We did not feed them, however they kept finding little scraps all over the place, so they were happy. We went for a browse around some of the shops and learnt a few things along the way. For instance, without a doubt, wool and the Icelandic jumpers are also one of the largest exports in Iceland, so you will see it in a lot of places. However, it is very expensive. Also, I personally love seeing that they also had Moomin memorabilia. Obviously the Moomins are Finnish, but I don't think you can go anywhere in the Nordic countries without seeing the Moomins. I actually call my mum Moomin as her little pet name. We just love the Moomins, and I am her Snorky, as in Snork Maiden. We also saw a lot of things made from walrus tusks, but before anybody starts panicking, a little bit like I did originally, it's actually all from walruses that have died of natural causes, because when Iceland was first settled, it was mainly just a walrus colony. So lots of walruses had simply gone there and passed away of natural causes. So rather than waste all the walrus ivory, they were made into cups and natural vessels to drink from or eat from. Speaking of which, we then decided we had worked up a little bit of a thirst again. So my mum went off for a little bit of a wander on her own again, which we all like to do, even when we're travelling together. We like our own time sometimes. And obviously I got a coffee and Johnny tried one of the other Icelandic beers called Gull this time, ironically. Thanking you. Icelandic beer. We then went for a wander around the botanical gardens in Akureyri, which I can only imagine is quite the feat to look after, given that for a large portion of the year there is no sunlight, and then for the other portion of the year there is nothing but sunlight, i.e. polar night and the home of the midnight sun. So I can imagine it is quite difficult. It's probably one of the reasons for the limited flora and fauna as well, although more to come on that, as it has some very unique flora and fauna that I loved getting to know about. For instance, the Arctic tern makes Iceland its home, and it is a very unique bird. It is actually said to travel the distance to the moon and back in its lifetime, and it favours Iceland as its home, along with the puffin, perhaps the mascot to Iceland itself. But also, I've previously mentioned in these vlogs, the Icelandic pony is also unique to Iceland, and also our Arctic foxes. But now, let's move on to something that I have been waiting for this entire trip. The famous rhubarb crepes, or rhubarb cake, because rhubarb is some of the naturally growing vegetation in Iceland. So let's have a look. This is a rhubarb cake. I've absolutely no idea how to pronounce it. It's something like hijibonbele. I'll insert it here on screen. It's oaty. It's got oats in it. Nice. No, it is. My mum got a little bit camera shy at this point, so I turned the camera off, but as you can see, I have saved half for my mum. It was absolutely delicious. I would describe it as a kind of oaty flapjack cake with rhubarb in the centre, served with a side of cream. So then it was time for us to fly off again and sail away into the East Icelandic fjords to complete our full circumnavigation of Iceland. We did do this via cruise ship. It is a very sustainable cruise ship, which I will talk about more on the upcoming vlogs. But after the tragedy that my mum had experienced this year, she really just wanted a little bit of luxury and happiness and the best of Mother Nature's recipes. So still to come on the vlogs is life on board while circumnavigating Iceland and going into the Arctic Circle, and also even a cruise ship tour and daily life on board a cruise ship. If you'd like to learn more about our previous time in Iceland, by all means watch the Reykjavik vlog or the Natural Wonders vlog that came before this. And now for some final thoughts from Johnny, who once more commandeered my camera like in the previous vlog. Oh, I tell you what, hey, if you open your mouth really wide and turn sideways, it'll look like you're eating the boat. Move forward a bit. Right, stay there, stay there. Stay there. Look like you're biting the bow.
That's a boat.
It's a boat.
I'm Johnny.
Do as you vlog then.
Welcome to Iceland. Everything's overpriced. Costs you a tenner for a beer, it's not even a pint. You can buy a regatta for 75 quid. Well, you can get it on M&M Direct. Ah, there's a little seabird, but that's disappeared. The seagulls are not as big as ours. And
I thought I'd cut him off right there before his alter ego took over. For instance, this one that came out earlier at the Botanical Garden.
I drive the tractor.
And with that, we sailed away to complete our full loop circumnavigation of Iceland, sailing by all the beautiful fjords and enjoying the best of Mother Nature's recipes along the way.